Just another moment. Okay. There we are. And start video. Okay, ready to roll. Now, based on the above, chapter 5, this whole idea of the offering of ourselves and the different meanings of the word Adam, Yuvam Gam Keninyan, Pesach, we can also understand the idea of Pesach and the counting of the Yomer. Pesach is Rosh Hashanah, since Pesach is in a what time of awakening from above, to awaken the awakening from below. And the purpose of the Rosh Hashanah is create a desire in the part of the godly soul. But come Pesach, because it's the beginning, the first Pesach and every Pesach ends compared to what came before, but the animal soul is not yet transformed. And therefore it says, Kiborach Ha'am, explains in Tanya that they had to run away from Mitzrayim because the Egypt was still strong within them. This is the idea when Adam, meaning the supernal Adam, Hashem is represented by the 10 spheres, is going to awaken you. As it's written, Kol Doide, about Pesach, the voice of my beloved, Medalig Eloharim, is skipping over the mountains. In other words, Shubas to Torah, it's in the merit of the Torah, which is called mountain. As it says, the mountains bring peace to the nation. It's a reference to Torah. But one needs to skip to get to the mountains. In other words, in order to receive the Torah, one must first skip. You must jump from where you were to a new place. And therefore, immediately after Pesach comes the Omer. And the Yomer is made of barley, which is typically animal food, to refine the nature of the animal soul. And that's why it says you shall count for yourselves. And the word count means to shine. In other words, you have to make yourself shine. You have to transform the animal soul. And this is the refinement of the 7 negative character traits of the animal soul. Here in the English, in the lessons part, he lists the 7 bad midos. Love for oneself, physical pleasure, anger, arrogance, needing to be right, holding oneself back, laziness. In other words, Yesod is being deeply connected to your selfish habits, and Malchut, of course, is the needing to tell others what to do and control them. One explains to one's animal soul that Hashem is the king. He can transform it to love for Hashem. So anger towards oneself, it's more severity, it's more self-control. I don't think that number 2 is entirely correct. It should be more like self-control. That's Gevura. Tiferes is not so much pride, but balance and overcoming obstacles. That's correct. Hod is the sense of self-control. 6 is the connection to Hashem and accepting Hashem as king, but also controlling your body in accordance with the will of the mitzvah, so be malchus. So not an exact description, but good enough for our purposes. So this is the idea that from the animals and the sheep and the goats, and then through this process we come to Shavuos, which is the awakening below. The Jewish people receiving the Torah, and each year us receiving the Torah anew on a new level. So the experience of Pesach to Shavuos is this experience of self-transformation. Because of you bringing which is the second part of the verse. This is the process of a person lifting oneself up. But by Matan Torah, Hashem came down on Mount Sinai, which is the above. Because the idea is that first we get awakening from above, then we develop ourselves, then we merit to a new awakening from above, that this time is a result of our efforts rather than merely sort of a gift from Hashem. And then the cycle continues. And the difference between the study of Torah that one did before this yearning was given to him and afterwards is the Adam Kiyakriv, in the study of Torah that comes after. So what's the difference? The study of Torah that came before one went through the process of prayer and afterwards. And the answer is that through the yearning for Hashem and the refinement of the animal soul, it takes place by virtue of Tefillah. So the one reaches an even higher level, Kilo Adam, beyond Adam, to draw a new level down into the level of Adam. So the means is basically that it also says Kilo Adam, because Hashem being revealed in the 10th Sirot is obviously a tremendous symptom. But when we reach a new awakening ourselves that comes as a result of our own awakening, so we draw down an even higher level, because by breaking through our own nature, as if it were we cause Hashem to break through his Adam nature and draw from a higher level. And this, of course, comes down into where we were. And that is the end of this minor. Okay. So that is the that is this minor. Okay. So any questions or comments before we go to the next thing? What do we say we wanted to do next? We discussed it. Yeah. So what did we come to a conclusion what we wanted to do next? Okay, let me think, because we had a whole discussion.
Yeah, but I don't think we made a choice.
Rabbi,
Yeah. Michal, do you remember?
I can't remember the discussion, but what was the last mimer that the Rebbe gave? Did we?
Atatzava.
Yes. Was that among our possibilities?
No, it's actually a very interesting one and is somewhat related to this time of year, to Yud Beis Tammuz in a certain way. Let me see if we have it in a translated version. Let's see. So this is let me take a look. It's a very interesting choice. Let's go here. Let's see. I'm pretty sure we have it in the Hasidic Heritage series. Let me take a look. Let me see if it is available. I may have to make copies in a PDF, but let's see. Oh, here we are. Whatever. Let me see if we can get to it. Hold on. Okay, yeah. So it is a PDF. We can make it big. So this is actually a very interesting choice, and I think it's a good place to begin. Just want to make it big, and then I'll tell you where it is, and I'll share it on the Zoom also. I just want to see. Okay, all right. Let's see if it works better here.
That's in the books.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay, let me just see, at Chabad.org, it might be a little bit easier to get to. Because this is a PDF, it's not so great for online. Let's see. I know it may be already on,
I think on Chabad.org is also a PDF.
yeah.
Oh, no, you have it. No,
Yeah,
maybe
but
not.
I have it only in English. I want to see if it's also available with the Hebrew.
Good morning.
Yeah, okay. So it's the same PDF, it's just easier to find. So we're gonna pop it out. And here we are. So oh, so in order to do it, you have to pop it out yourself. Let me so here is the link. It's Chabad, it's a long link, so I'm gonna post it in the chat. Here, I'm posting it in the chat, and you can just click on it. Oops, no. That's weird.
I think it's also available on Safaria as well.
Oh, yeah, really? They put the Chabad stuff on. That's interesting. Okay, copy here. So if you look to lessons in Chassidus Tetzaveh on Chabad.org, and here I posted the link, and then I'm gonna make it bigger on the screen.
What chat or where did you post it?
On the Zoom chat. But here it's just do lessons in Vasa Tetzav on Chabad.org, and it'll pop up. You know what? Okay, I didn't set up yet on this computer the WhatsApp, but it's lessons in Vasa Tetzav on Chabad.org. It should pop out right away. Make it nice and big. Okay. And for next week, I'll put the WhatsApp on the computer so we can use that also. Okay. There we are. Okay, so the Rebbe said many Maimorim in his lifetime, but he only edited a number. I mean, a decent number, but he edited. It's 4 volumes. He edited probably something over 100, and and the last mimer he edited before the stroke in 1992 was this mimer. And what's interesting about it, it really discusses the avoda, the service of Hashem going forward, between our present situation, which is one of no real obstacles to our Judaism other than the internal obstacles, and the relationship between that and how we bring about the redemption, how we bring about the coming of Mashiach. But it also discusses the mindset needed, because we have a lot of discussion of how to, in Chassidus, of how to deal with adversity from outside, persecution, poverty, and so on. But we have a completely different setup for the last 70 years or so. So this mimer really is sort of an update as to what the particular challenges are and what the particular avoda, the particular service is, in a world in which there are very few external challenges to one's Judaism. So in a way, just like the Basa Lagani, was the Frierdiker Rebbe's overview of the fundamentals of Chassidus for a new generation. This is sort of an update, a similar idea. So this is from the beginning of the mimer, is the pasuk in Tetzaveh, in the second section of the Torah in the end of Shemot that deals with the building of the Mishkan, and it begins as follows. V'ata Tetzaveh, and this is based on a mimer of the previous Rebbe and of the Alter Rebbe that discussed this verse. V'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael here. Well, now it's just lessons in Atot Tetzaveh. Here. And you need to, okay, 1 second. Atot, change it to, okay, 1 second. There we are.
Just sent it to you.
Yeah. And there you are. Great, no paper. But Tzavis b'nei Yisrael, and you shall command the children of Israel. Shall bring pure olive oil crushed for the purpose of illumination, lahalos ner tamid, to bring a constant lamp, constant lighting. This is the menorah of the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash, the Mishkan and the temple. But it says, Ata, you shall command b'nei Yisrael. This means, of course, just like with the sacrifices, that this is something necessary for all Jewish people in all times and all places. So in a way, it's a similar extension of what we just learned about from Likutei Torah. It's well known the particular points of interpretation found here. All the commandments of the Torah, it says Tzavis b'nei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel. And here it says you shall command, you Moshe shall command the children of Israel. In other words, normally Hashem just tells Moshe, command the children of Israel and do X, Y, or Z. Here Hashem begins by saying you should command, but of course Moshe is always doing the commanding because he's the communicator between Hashem and the Jewish people. So why in this particular mitzvah of the oil from the crushed olives do we say v'ata tetzaveh? He says, and to add a diuk, and to add, this question revolves more than just the choice of wording, but also the content. In other words, the lashon v'ata tetzaveh, the phrase "you shall command" implies that Moshe is the one commanding, but we know really it's God. So why does Moshe get the billing here as the commander? Tzarech lo'avin. Harei Moshe hu hashliach limsor Yisrael l'tzivei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe is the agent chosen to transmit God's commandments to the Jewish people. V'loma ne'amar v'ata tetzaveh. Why does he use shall command? Moshe is just the conduit. Why? He's not doing the commanding. Hashem's doing the commanding. Kam tzarech lo'avin mashikasi ko'elecha. They shall bring to you that the shemen should be brought, the oil should be brought to Moshe, right? Really, it's brought to the tabernacle to light the menorah. What do you mean? Hashem tells Moshe, you command the oil, and it should be brought to you. It's not brought to you, it's brought to the Mishkan. L'chera would seem, Kivin Shalos Hanei de Aaron, since the lamps were lit by Aaron, what do you need to bring it to Moshe? If you bring it to Moshe, Moshe just can hand it off to Aaron. So why bother bringing it to Moshe in the first place? Gam tzarech lo'avin masha kosav shemen kosas lamor, oil crushed for the luminary. It should say shemen lahayer, to illuminate. More means to be a source of light. The correct use would be to use the oil to illuminate. The fact that it's a source of light is academic. In other words, the key point isn't that oil is a source of light. The key point is that the oil needs to illuminate. You have to put it in the menorah and burn it. The fact that it is potentially a source of light, well, of course, but that's not the point. The point is for Aaron to light the menorah. So why Moshe? Why bring the oil to Moshe? Why is Moshe giving the command? And last of all, why the term lamar, which means a source of light, when really the point is that it should actually light up. The fact more indicates that it is a potential source of light. But really the goal isn't potentiality, it's actuality. Also, we have to understand the pasuk Shalach Zanema Meravid Boker. The verse which follows, it says they should light from evening to morning, because in the Mishkan, they lit the menorah in the afternoon and it would burn until the morning, at which point it would go out, and they light it again in the afternoon. And here it says to light a constant lamp. So granted, it was lit every day, which makes it constant, but why the switch? In other words, constant refers to the fact you do it every day. But if you just left it with morning to evening, you'd know that it's the morning, the evening of every day. So, in other words, the commandment here is an unusual form and goes beyond the function of the commandment. Normally, when Hashem gives us a commandment in the Torah, it discusses the function, right? Even with the Parah Adumah that we just read about, right? You get the cow and you shecht it and you burn it and you put the ashes, and this is what you do with the ashes and so on. Here, we depart from the function to make a bunch of statements that don't seem to be directly related to the function. So the obvious answer is going to be that like the unusual choices of is very similar to the Maimon we just learned on the Likutei Torah, that the unusual choices of words for a function in the temple that could have been said much simpler and more clearly are because that with regards to the function in the tabernacle and the temple, it would have been sufficient to use a simpler language. But because we're talking here about the personal avoda of each and every Jew, as everything in the Mishkan is, there's a book by the Ramah called Toras Ha'olah, in which he goes through every section of the Mishkan and Beit HaMikdash. and discusses what it teaches us in the service of Hashem. So too here. So because there is an eternal lesson to every single one of us that is accessible to us, therefore the language is changed in such a way as to bring out the particular aspect of the oil crushed for the menorah that's relevant to each one of us. But the question is, what is that? So it's very interesting. Now, the mimer that this is based on is V'kibel HaYehudim, also Parshas Tetzaveh, said on Purim Katan, in other words, the Purim of Adar Aleph, in which the previous Rebbe basically demanded a great degree of self-sacrifice and took place several months before his arrest and sort of launched the Chabad underground in the Soviet Union, which, as you know, involved an enormous amount of suffering and self-sacrifice and even martyrdom. And and he based and the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about this idea that one must undergo the crushing in order to bring about the light of Hashem's Torah, not be afraid to go through that. So as we'll see, the Rebbe is going to update the question. He says, it's one thing in the Soviet Union in 1927, because indeed there are enormous pressures upon us, enormous crushing challenges. And indeed, we have to respond to them by being even stronger. That the more we are oppressed and the more difficult it is to engage in Judaism, the more we find that inner strength, that inner light that we need. And here we have to update it from the Soviet Union in 1927 to the United States or Israel or wherever Jews are living in 1981. And those circumstances have not changed. If anything, they're even more relevant today, 40 years on from the saying of this mimer. So this is the background. But this mimer, really, this defiant mimer of 1927, is what ultimately both launched the very extensive Chabad underground as well as caused the previous Rebbe's arrest. The Tzivui Tetzavu Tzavsa V'chibur. So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that the word Tetzaveh, V'ata Tetzaveh, we know that the word mitzvah comes from the word tzavsa, a bond, a well-known thing in Chassidus Chabad. So over here, V'ata Tetzaveh means to say, Hashem tells Moshe that you have to bond, you have to be the agent to create this bond, as we shall see. V'ata Tetzaveh is B'nai Yisrael, that Moshe binds the Jewish people with the light of the Ein Sof. In other words, that the purpose of Moshe is to unite the Jewish people with each other and with the Ein Sof. Vayidei Moshe Mashpia Yisrael, through Moshe giving to the Jewish people that he connects them with the light of the Ein Sof. Through this creates an addition in Moshe. The Moshe and the Jewish people like the head and a foot. As the Moshe says, here I am in the midst of 600 people on foot. Because all the Jewish people are the feet of Moshe. Moshe is the head. Because the head directs the feet and the feet do the doing. And you need both. In other words, without the mind, the body has no function. But without the body, the mind has no use. So we're saying that you need a Moshe to direct the body of the Jewish people. And indeed, the Jewish people need to be directed, but at the same time, they also have to act on this. Like in a person, the feet bring the head to places can never reach on its own. And this is a very crucial point, that in the end, the core role of the leadership is not to be great on one's own, but to bring us. And so too with Moshe and Yisrael, that through the Jewish people, Moshe's feet, Moshe's advanced to a higher level. And this can be versed here in the midst of 600,000 people on foot, that through the 600,000 people on foot, the level of Anochi, I am God, which is the highest level, the highest expression of Hashem's essence, is drawn down into Moshe. So now, I mean, an obvious point is And this is something the Rebbe spoke about with regards to yortzites, that it's especially true when the head is unable to accomplish anything in this world because it isn't in this world anymore. And this is something the Rebbe spoke about often, even for anyone's yortzeit, that a person can continue being elevated and having influence. So if, for example, one is inspired by the desire to give merit to someone who's already passed in this world, and one learns Torah, says Kaddish or whatever. So when you do that, you elevate since it's that person's inspiration that causes you to do this extra mitzvah, so that accrues to that person too. So on a deeper level, this applies to Moshe Rabbeinu, any leader of the Jewish people, that when his inspiration, when his teaching, when his mission and command remains alive, so through the Jewish people carrying it out, being the feet as if it were, so the head is continuously uplifted, and it remains in continuous contact and inspiration to the people. And this is the idea of but through that Moshe commands and connects the Jewish people to the Ein Sof. Thereby they will be able to bring the olive oil to Moshe. In other words, they'll be able to cause Moshe to reach a higher level. And when Moshe reaches a higher level, then what happens is, of course, that in turn creates a command that lifts the Jewish people. So you have a positive feedback loop where Moshe inspires Jewish people, but when acting on inspiration, elevate Moshe to an even higher level, and thereby he receives an even greater communication from Hashem, which then is given to the Jewish people, and so on. So you have a consistent positive feedback loop. But how does this all work? And what is the particular crushed olive oil that we need to connect ourselves with, and thereby bring it to Moshe. To explain these ideas, we begin with a concept discussed in the previous Rebbe's Maimer. The Moshe Rabbeinu is called Raya Mehemna. Raya Mehemna can mean two things: the faithful shepherd, which is what he's indeed called in many places in the Tanakh, or Raya Mehemna. When we say to shepherd, what is a shepherd's job? He takes the sheep to a place where there's grass and they eat it. So Raya, to pasture, also means to feed. So Raya Mehemna can also be read to feed the faith of the Jewish people. So you could be the faithful shepherd or the feeder of faith. In one case, you're a super reliable leader of the Jewish people. In the other sense, you provide them with the means of acquiring faith. And faith, of course, is the intellect and emotion rise and fall. But faith is the truly immutable nature. There are two interpretations of this term. He's a faithful shepherd of the Jewish people. But he sustains and nurtures the faith of the Jewish people, as the Maimer explains. The Emunah sheyeshna b'Yisrael b'tzad atzmon, that the faith that the Jewish people has a result of themselves. For the Jews are believers and descendants of believers. Now, we all have faith, right? Every Jew deep down has faith in Hashem. But the problem is that faith could be purely an encompassing force. In other words, something you're aware of. Like, so a lot of people have a very strong identity of being Jews, but it doesn't cause them to actually do what a Jew is supposed to do. They know they're a Jew. They have feelings for Yiddishkeit. They even might have feelings of closeness to Hashem and so on, but it doesn't actually change their behavior in the sense of their observance of the mitzvah and so on. And we see this, the Gemara says that Gamvam Pumachtar Rachmana Karye, that the thief at the entrance to his tunnel calls out to Hashem. So here he's about to go steal, and I'll elaborate on this more next week. And he's asking Hashem for help in doing something which is totally against Hashem's will. Why? Because the faith hasn't entered his internal being. He's not running his life in accordance with that faith. He just has a vague sense of Hashem's presence and that he's all powerful, which is a good thing. But the goal is that it transform us, not merely that it be there. And we're going to talk about this more, Mitzvah Hashem, next Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.